Hello, everyone. Woo, let's shake it off just a little bit. Y'all, it's tense up in here. Let me see you. Let me see you shake it off real quick. Hey, I see. All right, so my name is OnRaé Watkins. I'm actually here representing the Smithsonian Arts and Industries building. We have a new exhibition entitled Futures, and I'm so excited to talk about what it means to be able to sustain our environment, our climate, and our planet. Something that I do like to do is start out with a chant. So I want you all to repeat after me, okay? You ready for this? All right, I want you to say this. We rocks the party that rocks the party.
We rock the party that rocks the party.
Okay, don't look around. Like it's cool. You got the rhythm. Like we got it. Let's do it. Let's try it again, okay? Say we rocks the party that rocks the party.
We rocks the party that rocks the party.
Rocking the climate that we all dream.
Rocking the climate that we all dream.
Yeah, we rocks the party that rocks the party.
We rocks the party that rocks the party.
Yeah, rocking the climate that we all dream.
Rocking the climate that we all dream.
All right, clap it up. Y'all did such a great job. I am so proud of you. And you stayed in rhythm. Yes, so I'm going to be talking with some amazing panelists today. I'm ready to geek out and to dive into the work. What about y'all? Yes, excellent. So real quick, I just want to take a moment because we didn't get a chance to do this initially. If you all don't mind introducing yourselves.
Sure. Can y'all hear me? How's everybody doing? Peace, love, and light. My name is Konshens, the MC. I am a hip-hop artist from Washington, D.C., also a cultural ambassador for the State Department and a land ambassador for the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification Office. Happy to be here.
Sari?
My name is Sari Nordman, and I'm a Finnish interdisciplinary artist and based in New York City. My background is in dance, and I have started making visual arts, installation, and I'm also a teaching artist in New York City public schools.
Clap it up, clap it up. Ben, what you got?
Hi everyone, my name is Benjamin Petit. I'm the co-founder of Dysturb. I'm based in New York, the other co-founder in Paris, and we do a lot of installing wood pasting work in public spaces.
Clap it up. Gideon?
Hi, I'm Gideon Mendel. As you know, I'm a photographer and working more and more with video as well. I'm one of the 52 photographers within this amazing, beautiful, and important exhibition.
Congratulations. Clap it up. So real quick, I want to just kind of take a moment to hear from each of you about the moment. I want to ground us in this. The moment that you all decided to begin dedicating your work or an element of your work to protecting our environment, to protecting the climate, to sustaining our planet. When was that moment when you decided to make that effort?
For me, growing up in Washington, D.C., to be honest, the environment, the air is not, it didn't feel clean. It didn't, you know what I mean? And it didn't hit me until I went to Morocco a few years ago. And as soon as I got off the plane, the first thing I noticed was I don't have to breathe as hard. And I noticed how even with the food was fresher, the water was cleaner, and people seem to really care about this place that we call home from a different perspective of just consuming, but actually consuming, but with the thought process of, if I consume this, how can I give this back in some form or fashion so that it regenerates and actually like gives energy back to this planet Earth, right?
I'm feeling that. What about you, Sari?
Well, coming from Finland, nature has always been important to me, and I've lived in New York City for a long time, and I was going through an identity crisis, and so I traveled to Greece, and I love history, and I went to many historical, ancient archaeological sites, and that's when I started thinking about the remains and seeing how the vitality in nature, how it kept growing through the ancient rocks, and then I was thinking New York City and the plastic waste and what we leave behind, the contemporary people, and I kind of just wanted to frame that experience.
So real quick, I love that y'all are wanting to clap after each person. I don't mind y'all giving those affirmations. I love it. You can go ahead and clap it up. I don't mind it. Excellent points you're making. Go ahead, Ben. You want to answer?
For me, it's kind of twofold because I'm a working photojournalist on top of running Dysturb. So as a photojournalist, I started to work on the stories around the climate. When I think one of the first one, I was in Dominican Republic documenting the displacement of climate refugees because of rising sea levels. So I was there to work for a development agency at first, and I kind of saw that while I was there, and then went back to work on that story. And then when Dysturb, we started pretty much when Dysturb was created in 2014, at the end of that year, to work with the Magnum Foundation to display photograph around climate change, around this initiative, Reframe Climate, that we started at the time in Paris for the COP21 to display all this work to try to motivate people and to activate people about this issue.
And I want to dive into Dysturb and the amazing work that you all are doing. So thanks for giving us that preliminary. Let's hear from Gideon, though.
Hi. Okay, so kind of winding things back a bit, I came of age as a photographer in South Africa in the 1980s, photographing the struggle against apartheid, with all the contradictions of being a white South African, documenting the really important struggle and the mobilization which led to the end of apartheid in the 90s. And I think that marked me deeply as a photographer and as an activist. And since then, I've kind of, I think, felt a strong compulsion to be documenting and working on the kind of most important social issues facing my generation. So for many years, I worked on issues around HIV and AIDS. And then in the early 2000s, I had children, and I tried to kind of do the exercise of imagining the world that they'd be living in when they were my age. So I began to research and think about the way they'd be living in 2040 and 2050, and that led me to think more and more about climate change and the kind of how it could really threaten the life of my children. And I think in the time that I've been working on it, it's become more and more about how will this actually threaten my life. The impacts of climate change just seem to be accelerating more and more. So I've kind of felt it's really, really, really important to use my skills, to use my abilities as best I can to work on the issue. So what you see over here in the exhibition is my project Drowning World, which is about flooding, and that's been involved 19 trips to 13 different countries to photograph flooding. I think what you're going to see over here is my more recent work on fire. And for me, the kind of tensions between flood and fire are kind of really, really important.
And I am so excited for y'all to be able to check this out. Yeah, I'm just waiting to see y'all, because I can't see your mouths. I'm waiting for your eyes to just kind of expand open real slowly as you're able to see Gideon's work when we show it a little later. Before we dive into you all's work, though, because like I mentioned, we're going to geek out with you today. We're going to dive deep into the work, the latest work that you all have. I do want to ask this question, though, about the power of art. The power of art. Why do you all think art is such a powerful tool in being able to communicate or even to push demands for social change? Why is it such a powerful tool?
Art, I think, art and music are the two languages that you don't have to share the same dialect to understand. And so I think when you put that in an arena where you're talking about something that's universal, that affects us all, it naturally ignites a person to become active, I think. Yeah.
That was a tweetable moment. I don't know, y'all need to be using a hashtag. Is the hashtag colonized? We gotta be using something to put these gems out in the atmosphere. Sorry, what you got?
Well, art provides different entry points, and as a teaching artist, that's what I think about how to convey to my students and help them dive into a piece of art. And in my personal life, seeing art pieces, artworks, at times that has changed my life, and has helped me understand a new perspective that I had no idea. And even if I had read 1,000 words, I may have not understood what was going on. But then I saw that artwork, and it was kind of like a new opening. Yeah.
So let me just dive into this real quick. Community, right? I understand that, and someone else may have another opinion about this, but I believe that in order to get to the future that we all dream, or to be able to experience the environment, the climate that we all dream, it takes collective action, right? It doesn't just take one person, it takes us all of us who are in here today. So Benjamin, talk to me about how you go about incorporating community into your work.
I mean, definitely there's different aspects to it. First, there's a community of photojournalists, because it's very a tight international community, and actually that's how Dysturb was initiated, and that's how it developed. It's really thanks to this neat community. So we select the work of different photographers, trying to have a wide diversity of stories, but also of the origin of the photographers. And then it's also about where do we show this work. So we choose to do it in the street, mostly, to have it accessible to as many people as possible. And we choose carefully where we want to do it, depending on the campaigns we do in each country, in each city. We try to be very mindful about who is our target audience, and to try to involve them in the process of either selecting the work or displaying the work, so that it's a real conversation from where the work has been done to where it's being shown.
And we're going to dive into your latest project, your latest campaign. So let's dive into that even more. Gideon, did you have an answer that you wanted to offer?
Well, I think it's an important question we all face, which is like, how can the work we make like have an impact on the world? You know, I mean, for me, the challenge is, you know, it's one thing to make a photograph. It's another thing to create a tool of visual activism, which can, you know, can work. And I mean, for me personally, I think engagement with organizations, you know, I've done work with Greenpeace, and, you know, I've perhaps been most excited by my engagement with Extinction Rebellion in the UK, where my images, I mean, it's to some extent, when I've done that, I've lost control of the images, you know, which is often quite scary for a photographer. But to have my images kind of used on billboards and in protests and carried on the streets, I mean, that's something which I felt very proud of.
And so I think that if y'all are ready, and let me see your hands if you're ready to dive into some of their work. Yes? Let me see them. Oh, wait, y'all raised them too fast. I don't know if I appreciate that. I'm feeling this conversation. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the first piece of work. I think we're going into my homie, Konshens the MC. Clap it up for Konshens, y'all. What type of magic do you have for us? Give it to us.
So I feel like you kind of calling me out a little bit. I'll let the video play.
Standing proudly, who gon' come and get me here to bang to the drum? That's the sound of the city. I could probably tell you about the struggle or how I prayed. Every day that we bump into a come up, it's about time that I don't hurt that reeling. So, literally speaking, that means I'm not whining, just grinding. It's a whole team full of youngins needing to see something instead of wasting some time. Unemployment on swole, jobs on slim fast. Folks needing to come up, trying to score some quick cash. Flash of the sirens, ambulance, police looking for some more. In my hood, no peace. Seats to the gunfire. Nah, they just reload. Trying to feed their family while street ball be freeloading. This song just trying to maintain. Making sense of this whole mess. Drug trade be sky high. Everybody want duck stress. Just trying to get by. So many confused. All right, so now wrong. See how they switch rules? We stuck between a rock in a hard place. We walk around, no smiles with a hard face. No ducking down, we gotta have it our way. Sound of the city, we sing the melody all day. Cause it's talking.
What did we just witness? Because, y'all, let me tell you something. When I first met Konshens, which was really like an hour ago, I'm like, wait a second. You do so much. And there's so much identity to you. All of the elements that you're able to offer this world. Congratulations, first off. You are magical. But talk to us about what we just witnessed.
It was just a montage video of everything that I do with regards to creative writing workshops, specifically for youth with disabilities. I work with a lot of youth with IEPs, mental, behavioral, and physical disabilities, to create spoken word, original spoken word pieces, original songs. And so this was a glimpse of that. Also, some of the work that I do, I have a classical hip hop group called Classically Dope, in some of those performances. But I felt like you called me out when we were sitting down, right? And you were like, so you're just gonna let them hear a song? And so I walked through the exhibit.
Real quick, hold on. Y'all, I'm just saying, we have a performer on stage. Do we not want to see this person perform?
Yes.
So, and I was feeling the way, right? So as we sitting there talking, I was like, okay, I walked through the exhibit and I came up with something really quick. And so I'll recite it for y'all, if that's okay. All right. For many different landscapes, we commune and handshake and share smiles, not knowing each other's conditions in which each of us are living. The conditions, climate of a damaged environment we can stop. Second slip off the clock from time wasted. Heightened sensations we all feel walking through a valley of saddened images. It's up to us to flip the script, together not divided. Tonight from the Age of Society, this is Cold and Ice.
See, but I called you out, but I didn't think you were going to write something in 10 minutes. I mean, come on. How unfair is this? So talk to us about the work that you do when it relates to working with young people. I am such an advocate for working with youth. I'm sure we probably have some educators in here. Raise your hands if y'all are educators in the space. A few of y'all. Okay, what's up? Educators are amazing. So talk to us about, I think I want to hear it from the perspective of environmental justice or climate justice. How do you go about getting young people excited about topics like that? I'm not going down the hallway and I'm like, I'm going to my environmental justice class. I'm so excited. Like, how do you get them to get hype about that type of work?
It's funny. So I did a children's album, first time doing a children's album, and I was wondering what I could talk about that would be of benefit and could also serve as like a learning tool for youth, right? And I said, okay, cool. I'll talk about like social conscious stuff and the importance of like being proud and stuff. That's what I was thinking. And then I get a call from Ricky Cage, who was a Indian composer, Grammy winner, and he was like, yo, I have these songs over here in India that are part of this the school curriculum, and they're in 5 million books now, and we want to increase them to 10 million books, but we want to change what's in this curriculum to songs. Would you be down? I said, okay, cool. And we commenced to doing an album titled Funk the Earth, which is centered around the 17 World Sustainable Development Goals by the UN. And it went from an idea to a series of songs that were talking about the importance of CO2 in trees and recycling and no more plastic trash and the power of smiles, especially now when all of our smiles are covered, right? The importance of spreading positive energy. And it just morphed into something that ended up being picked up by the United Nations and displayed for their desertification and drought day last year.
Wow.
And this year they're going to be in 10 million curriculum books in India. Just talking about the responsibility each and every one of us have to not only give homage to this planet Earth, to understand how we're all connected through it, and to realize that at the end of the day, this is the only home that we all share, right? And so it's very vital that each and every one of us do our part to ensure that we can keep living it.
That's incredible. Give it up for Konshens, y'all. That is incredible. Congratulations to you. I have kind of a personal question about this, because we're diving into all of y'all's work. But this is something I just really wonder. how do you go about, like when you create the music, especially with these young people, you know, sometimes if you're talking about social issues, it can sometimes come across as a little corny.
Right.
So how do you get them to take it in and really be able to create something that, I mean, that they wouldn't say is whack? Because you know how kids are, like, oh, that's whack. Like, how are we gonna rap about this or sing about this particular issue? Especially as we talk about climate justice, without them being like, I mean, it's kind of corny. I don't know how to make this cool. Like, how do you make it cool?
You know, what's funny is that I find that a lot of youth that you would think feel certain ways about certain topics is only because of the peers that are around them, right? And a lot of times you put youth in a room and you give them the opportunity to speak about what they want to speak about, it's usually like things of concern and importance. And so I just asked, because I have a couple of youth from Duke Ellington that are on the album. For the
Duke Ellington, a school out in DCPS, amazing school. And
they sung on the CO2 song. So I just asked her, if you were to do a song about trees, right? About trees talking to people, about how they need our CO2 and they're so excited to give us oxygen in return. Like, how would you talk about it to a point where your friends would want to hear it? Like, I have to take my old self away from it, right? And I have to like, yo, how can I make this sound cool? If you were to have a discussion with your friends about trees, what would it sound like?
I love that.
Right? And then you get their minds rolling and it becomes uncorny for them because now they're looking at it as like, yo, like, I'm like, how can trees be corny? How can air be corny? Like, we breathe it, all of us how to use it, right? You know what I'm saying? And so I put it in the perspective of, yo, this is something that affects all of us, and all of us have to engage in it somehow. So how would you do it that your peers would accept it? And I sit back and take notes.
And they be coming up with straight fire, blam, 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 fire. Go. Well, I heard from around the mulberry bush, I don't know where the mulberry bush is at, but I heard that you had something to play for us.
Yes.
You already blessed us with live performance. Look, my friend right here is so hyped right now. I heard you got something to play for us.
Yeah, I have a song titled Take Back the Climate. And it is a song that talks about the relationship between nature and its habitat, the environment and how it's affected. It talks about how nature is affected by the overdevelopment of buildings and the overuse of resources. And it's kind of like a call to action, like, this is our world, this is our voice, let's take back the planet. So I hope you enjoy it.
I'm ready. Y'all ready to hear this? Yes.
Take back the climate. It's our world, it's our voice. To turn things around, it's our choice. Gotta learn to love the planet, see that's a fact. It's our home, so we gotta take it back. The climate, take it back. The sky, take it back. The air that we need to survive. Do your part until you see a cleaner world for you and for me. Take it back. Wake up in the morning, fresh air I breathe. Look out the window at nature I see. Birds flying high, flowers, tall trees. Earth is amazing, a wonder to me. Go different places, see so many things like the population of animals who breed. All in competition for biotic needs, fed by the sunlight, water and green leaves. It seems we're in a habitat environments are critical. Condition to fix it might need a miracle. For every resource, of course, there's a need. And vital to how we all proceed. In climate, the sky. Until you see a cleaner world for you and for me. Take it back. Living in bubbling biosphere, we survive. No more pollution, no more cloud in my eyes. Wildlife had nowhere to reside, but everything should have a place to be alive. Look, we gotta reverse. Damage the environment is taken for it gets much worse. Mother Nature not made for her, she gave life to every living thing. Can't neglect the work. Gotta get back what we take, follow the rules we make. Everybody plays a part, life's at stake. For every resource, of course, there's a need. And vital to how we all proceed. Indeed. The sky, the air that we need to survive. changed, and nothing stays the same. The skies are brighter blue, and the sun is shining through. Yeah. The 4 pillars. Living zero as we become Earth's hero. No carbon footprints, the benefits take the climate much farther. Letting nature cool. Leading an industrial revolution. This is our fight, our plight to take back the climate. It's our world, it's our voice to turn things around. It's our choice, gotta learn to love the planet. See, that's a fact. It's our home, so we gotta take it back. The climate, the sky, the air that we need to survive. Depart until you see a cleaner world for you and for me. Take back the climate. Take it back.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Repeat after me. Take back the climate. All right, come on, yeah. Take back the climate.
Take back the climate.
Yes. So, yo, it started out kind of like EDM for a second, y'all. Was it me? And then it just kind of dropped to the hip hop. I'm like, oh, where we going? Where we going? That was amazing. Incredible. Incredible. Give it up for Konshens again, y'all. Before we transition to our next artist, though, I want you to tell us about your favorite moment when creating that piece.
I like the bridge of that song the most. I can't sing, but here you go. The world has changed, and nothing stays the same. The skies are brighter blue, and the sun is shining through. I really like that.
Give it up for the singing, y'all. Y'all don't want me to start singing, I'm just saying. I ain't even gonna try it. Yo, this was amazing. Thank you so much for showing your work, Konshens. All right, y'all, ready to move on to the next artist? Woo! All right, so I think we actually may have Benjamin up next. Oh, sorry. Sari. Sari, give it up for Sari, y'all. Sari, look. I am so hyped to dive into this video. I'm not even gonna say anything. I went and I watched it and I was like, ooh, I got so many questions. But I want you to intro this video that we're getting ready to watch and talk about the piece that you're getting ready to showcase.
So it's a longer video, and this is an excerpt, 2-minute excerpt of building a tower to frame plastic waste. My installation is a tower, which reflects on climate change and also the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, story of greed and value of cultural differences. And in the process, I also filmed myself making the tower, and the video is the first prototype of tower, and then that's where it began.
Dance, installation, film, multimedia. I'm so hyped for this, and I want to tell you that I think you are just such an incredible artist. I love when, first off, I just think it's dope that all of y'all, focus on so many different mediums, but when you're able to bring that together to create a moment, it's certainly incredible. So let's go ahead and dive into this video showcase.
You sit back and say, everybody has to start thinking about what they're doing right now. You don't have any time to wait. We're really pushing consumption when we should be pushing conservation. Hold on to what you have. Make it little, don't make it big.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Sari Nordman. Yo nací en Honduras de padres carmeneros y cultura galífuna. Resido en el estado de Connecticut hace 32 años. Recién trasladado a la ciudad de Nueva York y me han invitado a este proyecto medioambiental sobre el calentamiento global. Mis observaciones en el estado de Connecticut tenía mi jardín, sembramos, cosechamos. Es una producción Muchas gracias.
Wow. I don't know if y'all could feel when the wind was blowing. I could almost like feel it, like the vibrations of it. Yeah. Like just the sound placement, you know, the rustling of the plastic. You know, we obviously see the tower falling and like feel it, you know, when it falls. Watching you, you know, I would imagine it's like in your wood shop or studio space creating. And then you see these montage of interviews that are taking place. And I had to write this down because one of the first people that speak, they make this statement and they say we push for consumption when we should be pushing for conservation. What does that mean?
Well, this is also what I think about the story of Tower of Babel. That there's this greed, and I think it's like we are pushing consumerism, and we are pushing for greater GDP, and that means we need more people, we need bigger cities, and it's sort of like it's this compound effect, and it's a cycle, and it's like a cycle of greed and exploitation. So original idea was to build a tower to frame plastic waste, and here you see that, and because walking around in New York City, it's like the plastic has become an entity that is sort of like kind of like the animals, or people, they just kind of like float around in space when you walk around, or you look out the window and you see birds, but then you also see the plastic bags that are flying around. And so I wanted to frame that, and I had an opportunity to build the tower in a Catwalk Institute residency, artist residency, and when I had built it with architect Robert Mincarini, I realized that there was potential to also include video, that the plastic became like protection screens, and it was a time when there was a lot of climate denial and climate change denial and science denial, and having traveled in this country and also in the states where people were more likely to vote against climate change and science, but I still heard people saying like, there's less snow, or like comments like that, as if they were anticipating that something has changed. And so I was like, I need to collect these stories, even just like a sentence, somebody saying something like that, and have them be the tower. And then I wanted to make it a Tower of Babel, people from different language backgrounds sharing their stories. And to date, I have close to 60 interviews, and people speaking in 35 different languages, and then they are transcribed on a website with also links to scientific evidence of climate change.
Sari, so just tell us or talk to us about this. So are these projections of those interviews on the plastic?
Yes.
That's wild. That is so wild. Tell us how you went about choosing or selecting your interviewees.
So I approached my friends, my And then different communities. Also language schools, and I think the word, it just spread. I had open calls, I sent emails, and then when I had those open calls, people would invite their friends, and then if they would tell their friends, and they said I should contact that person, and so it kind of like the word gets spreading, and I was just really, at first I wasn't sure if anybody was coming to tell their story, and I was just impressed how many people they wanted to share their story, and I was just actually really impressed, like really surprised how many people wanted to share their story, and coming from different countries, and I was just amazed, and I felt so grateful for having them share their story.
Okay, repeat that last piece. I want to make sure we heard it. You basically wanted to make sure that their stories were amplified and uplifted.
Yes, yeah. So, and many of them have told me that they are grateful that I am collecting their story, and because then their voices can be amplified and shared. And I have people who have shared their story from Middle East, from Asian countries, from Africa, Europe, from South America, North America, all around the world.
So talk to us about what the next iterations of the tower looks like. Like what is your dream for this piece?
So when this was the picture you see right here, it was from an exhibition in New York City last summer, Jamaica Flock said Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning at the King Manor Museum Garden. And when I saw it there, I realized that the tower, maybe it could be even more impactful. Maybe it has to be even prettier, more robust. And so that was some ideas that I was thinking. And I was also thinking about how maybe there can be interactive elements, and so yes, it's a continuous saga, and I have continued interviewing people.
If we think back to the video, and we all saw that moment when the tower kind of tipped over, right? And then Sari comes over and just so elegantly with this very ethereal way of just laying across the tower. Talk to us about what that moment meant. What was the purpose of that moment?
Well, my original idea was to build a fallen tower. I wanted to see a fallen tower, but then, but before I realized that before I could actually build a fallen tower, I had to build the tower. And so I have not built the fallen tower yet. Okay. So I'm kind of going backwards. I need to build the tower and then see the falling, because that's what I wanted to see first. And because of my background in performing arts, in dance, I always think about the movement element, and also in tower, I was thinking about the movement of the plastic bags and their movement in the wind, and so that was the idea.
So I want to briefly kind of highlight this before we transition. From your artist statement, you say, "My work highlights nature's ability to remain vital despite the impact of contemporary humans." And you kind of touched on it a little earlier, but I would love for you to continue to unpack that. What does that mean, and how do you achieve that through your work?
Well, when I was traveling in Greece, and I was thinking about my place in the universe, on planet Earth, and then seeing seeing all that history around those ancient sites, and kind of seeing myself in this timeline, and things kind of seem to it helped me see myself in a new place, and then also seeing how the nature was growing, and it was vital, and it was beautiful, and I kind of wanted to share that vitality, that importance of that vitality and importance of nature and the beauty and then my worry that what we are going to leave behind is not going to look as pretty or beautiful, peaceful maybe for the next generation. So that's kind of what I wanted to try to frame in Tower, and hearing those stories from people from around the world.
And finally, you talk about healing nature to ultimately heal ourselves, and I would imagine to protect the planet. How do we go about doing that? How do we go about healing nature to heal ourselves? What do you mean by that?
Well, I've had interviews, and I myself also feel this. I relate to many of my interviewees have talked about mental health, how nature is a sort of a balancing force, and many interviewees, they also share some wisdom. They want to share some resources or things that we can consider to protect the environment. And one thing is that they say is that go to nature and find your relationship, your connection with nature, because sometimes we are so removed that we don't even realize what nature is. And I think that's important, that we need to try to connect with nature and understand what it is.
Can we all make a commitment today? Maybe sometime Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sometime later on this week, to commit ourselves to connecting with nature at some point. Can we all make that commitment? We are super impressed with your work, and we thank you so much for sharing. Can we clap it up again for Sari, y'all? Incredible. All right. Ooh, Ben. Yeah, let's clap it up for Ben, y'all. Let's dive into Dysturb, which you had a chance to kind of tease us a little bit earlier. So I believe we're diving into a few photos. I mean, we have so much. Oh my goodness. Come on. This is too dynamic. What are we doing here? So talk to us about Dysturb, this organization that you have, and the campaign that you all are currently running throughout the world.
So Dysturb was created by a group of photojournalists like myself. The other co-founder, Pierre Terjman, is based in Paris. So after years and years covering all kinds of humanitarian crises or conflicts or over great issues of our world, we decided to place our own photograph in the public space, because we were a bit disheartened by how the fast pace of the news cycle and also the growing distrust toward the media. So we were looking for a way to reconnect with the audience and show our work differently. So at first, we started to put our own photograph, print it large on a black and white paper, and paste it around the street. And pretty quickly, it was super well received. So instead of posting up only our work, we opened it to all our colleagues, photojournalists, documentary photographers, and started to be invited by a lot of photo festivals around the world to do that. And then in 2015, Magnum Foundation approached us and asked us to collaborate on this project that we're showing here in the streets of DC, Reframe Climate. So after years showing international news and all kinds of social issues, we started to design this activation focused on climate change. So selecting the work of a lot of photographers, actually including Gideon's, and showing it. The first time was in Paris during the COP21 in 2015. I think we showed then 25 photographers this way, like large photograph, usually 8 by 12 feet in the street of Paris, sometimes with permission, sometimes not. And the goal was to initiate conversation, to challenge stereotypes, and to have the work very accessible to everyone. The particular thing also with Reframe Climate is that we decided to include, to add an interactive component, and to have like audio recordings of the photographers telling you more about their stories. So in DC, you can scan a QR code and you hear the photographer tell you the story. In other cities, because we did it in Paris, we did it in Charlottesville, Virginia, and in the Bay Area, it would be sometimes you text a code to a phone number and you would receive a call directly with this pre-recording. So yeah, we've been doing that since pretty much 2014, 15.
So can you talk with us about, I know you had just mentioned earlier that people have been receiving this activation very well. And I saw a photo earlier, I wish we could go back to it, but it was, someone was installing. I would imagine your team was installing, and you had this group of people that were kind of just sitting there and watching the installation. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you've seen? Like when people are walking by, like what is their reaction to the pieces when they see this just kind of walking down the street?
Yeah, for us it was very special because as freelance photojournalist or from agency, you're not necessarily connected with the receiver of this work. You work often for media and for collaborating with editors. And doing that was a way for us when we started to really connect with the public. And while we are installing, we have passerbys like asking what we are doing, and like that we are able to really create that connection and that human connection in real life and not only through screens. And so yeah, for us it was really a way to connect our work to the public.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you go about selecting the artists that you feature, throughout this campaign?
So we work a lot like a publication. We are not representing certain photographers. We are open to work with anyone pretty much. So there's different ways. Collaborating with the Magnum Foundation, obviously they have a vast network of emerging photographers that are helping. And for Reframe Climate, we have a mix of renowned photographers from big agency, Magnum, Noor, and so on, and freelancers, emerging photographers. We meet sometimes talents through portfolio reviews or stuff like that. So it's really trying to, our goal is more how from one theme we can find different ways to represent it, have different voices, and also depict different parts of the world to have a better global picture of this issue.
And how do you go about measuring the impact of this campaign, this Reframe Climate campaign?
So we get that asked pretty often, and it's really mixed. Obviously, it's hard because we can't like count how many people are passing in front of each poster. Although sometimes we can have access to that kind of measurements, but it's pretty rare. So we have either some quantity measurements by having like how many people flash the QR code, for example, or because we put that in the street, but then we also do our campaign digitally on social media, and our partners share that. So we have all those KPI from social media. But then we have also a lot of like more quality measurements. Like obviously to interact with such a large piece in the public space is something very different than scrolling an image on Instagram or something like that. It's kind of way more impactful. So depending on campaigns, at times we do, we have questionnaires, prompts that we ask the people online and also in the street to kind of get their reaction. And we've been super surprised at times by how people reacted. I remember once in Toronto, in Canada, we did a campaign actually on climate change as well. And one poster got teared down a little bit, and we came back the next day and someone had sewn it back, the poster, with some red thread. And we were like amazed by someone who have done that. And so we had all kind of reaction to our work.
Wait, so you're telling me that someone had taken one of the installations down?
Not completely down, it just had a big tear.
I got you. And someone else came in to fix it.
To sew it back, yeah.
Wow. I was actually getting ready to go into that. Have you run into instances where people have not received it well, and what has happened? But it sounds like that's one of those examples.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of times, depending on the subjects, often like everything touching to migrants or refugees, we had like some posters that were like completely tear down, like, and you go back 2 hours after and there's nothing left. But at times, was kind of more interesting. I remember one time in Australia, we were doing this whole campaign around women's rights, and there were some pictures, like we never put like offensive or hardcore images because obviously it's in the public space and we want everyone to be able to see it. But still, the theme it was touching on kind of touched someone hardly, and she contacted us saying, "Oh, seeing this picture and the story around it remind me of some abuse I had." So it was a real challenge for this person, and it was kind of on her path from work to her place. So she was asking us if we could remove it. And we started to talk with her, and we were like, listen, if it's like something that challenging for you, sure, we will remove it. But before doing that, we tried to explain her what we were doing, why we were doing it. And having this conversation with that person, pretty much right away, she told us, you know what, it's important to show that. So keep it, please. And we were able to build from that. So it's so important to have this kind of interaction, and at times like one-on-one with people about their story and how they relate to the work.
What is your kind of your dream project or your dream vision maybe in the next 30 years? Where do you hope to see Dysturb and the work that you all are doing with this Reframe Climate campaign? Think about it.
I mean, we are a very small group in some ways, and at the same time, we have a lot of support from a lot of people, but I would love to be able to react more to either the news and be able to pass in many places at once to show work, being on the climate, being on the news. I mean, right now, I would love to be able to show the news that's happening in Ukraine and show it in Russia, for example. But obviously, the people who would do that would like put themselves in very harm conditions. So we don't have this capacity yet, but hopefully, and with climate the same way, I would love for us to be able to really showcase it and display it in really the places where it matters, be it either with people who like pass the laws, or to find other ways to really touch the right people to have an impact and to make changes. Here on those last pictures, we actually see what we've been doing in DC these last days.
I was actually getting ready to ask, but as we transition, where can we find your pieces, or excuse me, the campaign? Where can we find that reflected throughout the city if we wanted to go out and check it out?
I think on the Konshens website, if you look for Reframe Climate, you can find a map with all the location where we did those space stops. It's not far from here. It's pretty much like 15 minutes walking in the Georgetown neighborhood. And they're all pretty close by. There's 8 photographs in total around M Street and Wisconsin Avenue mostly, where we did where we placed those photographs, and we paired them with facts and statistics that were sourced from the Yale School of Forensic and Environmental Studies, so that you would have like personal stories through the photograph and the captions provided by the photographers, and also some global context with those facts and statistics.
And it's interesting with I think the image beforehand actually reflected Gideon's work. I don't know if you caught it, but you were definitely reflected in there. I think that's a great segue. Benjamin, thank you so much. This was excellent.
Thank you.
It's a great, congratulations on this. And I can't wait to see what happens and how you all continue to evolve over the next several years. We're going to transition to Gideon. Give it up for Gideon, y'all. I don't know if y'all have been to Gideon's website, but I have. And one of the first images that you see is actually the images that are reflected over here in the corner in the, is it Drowning World?
Yeah, that's Drowning World.
My gosh, it is so striking, and it just, when you take a look at it, I already know exactly what you are trying to get across. It is just, oh my God. And then this, Burning World, correct?
Yes, so, I mean, this work isn't part of this exhibition, but it's my newest work. And it's, I suppose, in conversation with Drowning World, it's exploring the impacts of fire around the world. I mean, it's trying to tell a global story. And you know, it's involved trips. You know, I've worked in California twice, Australia, Greece, and Canada. So it's, I mean, whereas in Drowning World, that's much more time and 13 different countries. This is fewer, but it's very different photographing fire and flood. You know, they're very different kinds of contexts. But yeah, so this is just a selection of 20 pictures from Burning World, and it's a combination of portraiture and kind of landscape work.
Something that I know that I've seen you, you know, just in your artist statements is that, particularly for this series, you decided not to capture the actual flames, but the aftermath. Why did you decide to do that?
A couple of reasons. One is cowardice. You know, but also a feeling that there are lots of people doing that kind of work really well. You know, there are other people who, you know, kind of are chasing the flames, and it's important. It's an important job, and often the flames are very dramatic and very kind of visual. But I felt I wanted to take on the challenge and kind of show the traces, both the traces in the landscape, but the traces in kind of people's psychology, and the impacts on people's lives. And so I'm kind of like the slowest news photographer ever. You know, that I sort of get to the scene maybe 6 to 12 weeks after the event, and that's maybe a moment when actually people have had some time to process what's happened, so it's kind of feasible for them to actually kind of be confronted by the camera.
So can you talk a bit about that? So who I'm looking at right here, this was where they lived or dwelled?
Okay, so this is the town of Greenville in Northern California, which was 80% destroyed by the fire. This building was the hotel in the center of the town, and she was one of the workers who was working in the hotel. So she lost her place she lived, she lost her livelihood, and you know, there were still steps going up the back, so she was able to kind of get to this position. I mean, for me, it's a very graphic telling of that tale.
Gideon, what happens when you actually go to these people and ask them, hey, can I capture this moment? I mean, because I would imagine that I mean, so much trauma that they experience. Like, how receptive are they when you make this request?
I mean, it varies. I mean, and kind of from community to community, it's kind of different. And I think sometimes people obviously feel suspicious and feel, you know, am I taking advantage or kind of exploiting this situation? But I think what often happens in communities is that, I mean, for me, the portrait needs to be kind of a very deep engagement. And I think what I offer is a kind of deep, I suppose, a deep witnessing. And I've come to see that people might be a bit uncertain, but they come to really kind of appreciate that. And it's not a quick process. You know, for me, there's a lot of conversation. You know, I don't just arrive there.
I want to stop you real quick. Can you talk about that? Like, when you approach these people, like, what does that conversation entail? I would imagine a great deal of sympathy, empathy.
Of course, and I guess there's a lot of, I suppose what you call emotional labor in the process. And for me, particularly when I don't have the language to communicate, my assistant, the kind of person I work with, is really crucial. You know, I need to be working with someone has huge empathy and is able to connect and support. And also, particularly often when I'm engaged with trying to make the frame and the composition, you know, who can also kind of maintain that connection. And I mean, I don't know if you've probably seen my kind of Drowning World portraits on the other side. And the kind of process with working in a flood and working in a fire is very different. Just kind of graphically, in a flood, you've got the flat plane of water. So actually, to compose the image is really easy. The challenge is just to be there. The challenge there is to kind of be there with the people and have them there in the right moment. But actually, the composition makes itself, because a flood is such a kind of graphic and visual situation. In a fire, it's very different because it's a hugely chaotic environment. And it's very hard to make the kind of composition and the frame work. So I spent a lot of time framing and composing very precisely. So I arrange the frame before the people come into the picture. So the camera is set up on a tripod, so I don't have to, because it usually takes me about 45 minutes to figure out what the frame is going to be. So I have the camera set up and totally ready, so when the subject, person comes, or the family come into the frame, that's already kind of organized and set up. And then it's about the engagement and the connection.
But how do you go about choosing your locations? How do you go about, like, I loved how you just talked about having to set up the frame, right? It takes you about 45 minutes. You know, when we have these forest fires that happen throughout the world, I wonder how you go about choosing a particular location. So if maybe an entire community has been impacted, why, like, what made you choose this specific building or hotel, house?
Well, I mean, I think there are different layers of it. I mean, I think the first one is just choosing where to go. Yeah. And with both flood and fire, that's a huge amount of anxiety, research, you know, kind of trying to figure out. I mean, on Friday, I'm heading to Denver to do some work on the aftermath of the fires, which happened near Boulder. And I've actually got 2 people in Boulder who are kind of working on it and trying to find people. And there's a huge question, you know, is it worth going? Are people going to be receptive to people? You know, often I think being an outsider coming in from far away, you know, people can feel suspicious, can feel that it's the wrong thing to do. So I think it's important to me that I feel welcomed and I feel that people want to engage. And then once you're in a situation, it's so much about kind of the connections and people having a good experience. But it's responding visually. I'm in an area, you know, we kind of hear things. And for example, with this photograph, when I was in Greece, you know, people told us there was a village where a church burnt down. You know, so we kind of made contact with the village. Andriana Theokari, who was my assistant, she, you know, got in touch with the mayor. We actually photographed the mayor, who was an amazing woman in this location, but we wanted to photograph the priest, and we found the priest, and made, you know, so there's a lot of very complex arrangements. You know, so we made a time to find the priest, and yeah, it's kind of intuitive. You kind of follow things. I see things that make sense, but there's also a lot of pre-arrangements. You know, we get in touch with people. They agree to do it. We make a time. You know, it's often a complex edifice of planning, arrangements, coordination, but then also completely random things. Sometimes you just see someone at their home and they're there and they're happy to be part of it. And, you know, so it's also being kind of organized and improvisational. And often what happens is the things you have hugely planned fall apart, and then accidents happen and wonderful things happen out of the accidents.
And I think I want to, before I go into audience Q&A, so I want you all, if you have a question, we're going to be opening up the floor for you all to come up and to ask a question. So start thinking about it right now for any of our panelists. Gideon, how do you go about protecting yourself? Like, and I say protecting yourself as in just the emotional harm that can come along with this. I can't imagine, you know, when you have these conversations or your assistant has these conversations with these people and just having to take in their stories, even while you're out there, I would imagine that there's just so much that you're taking in. How do you go about protecting yourself? Well,
you know, that's an important question, and it's a question I often get asked. It's how do I deal with this psychologically? You know, why do I feel compelled to put myself close to such kind of, to other people's pain, other people's trauma? You know, why do I do that? And they're kind of, they're two, I mean, something I've always struggled to answer. And I've got two things. But firstly, my partner, Sarah, who's a nurse, when I was asking her about this and why I find it so hard to kind of answer, I mean, she said, it's really, really simple and really easy. She said, you're just the kind of fucked up person who finds it really difficult to engage with your family and the people and your friends and the people you're close to, but finds it really easy to connect strongly with strangers in distress. So that's thanks to Sarah. But something else I've kind of come to understand and just view recently is just the connections with my own family history, in that my parents were both refugees from Nazi Germany, and who had a huge amount of trauma in their lives. My father lost his real father in the First World War, and then lost his mother in the Holocaust. And although my mother lost a lot of family as well, and they both had very difficult escapes from Germany. So I've just recently, found a lot of documents and learned about their trauma, although this was never spoken about, never dealt. They did their best to avoid it. But I think I'm just starting to kind of see the connections between my drive to and my ability to articulate other people's trauma with the kind of history of kind of trauma in my own family.
This work is incredible, and I hope that y'all have a chance to check out Drowning World. I wish we could dive into that. I have so many questions about that work. It is amazing. And I want to just thank you all so much for sharing your stories. I want to give an opportunity for our audience to be able to ask questions. And I want to make sure that we affirm you, because it takes courage to step in front of an audience and to ask questions. And so I want to invite you all, I want to give you all a few seconds, maybe a minute, to be able to sit and think about a question you may want to ask. But I do want to invite you all up to join us. If anyone wants to step up and ask. Yes, clap it up for our friend here. Come on up. Yep, it looks like it, yep. Please, well, first, before you tell us who you are, tell us why you came, and then please pose your question, because we want to hear from you. You're a part of this community.
Sure, yeah, my name is...
and make sure you speak directly into the mic because you have your mask on. We want to be able to hear you, okay?
Sure. Hi, my name is Phil. I came because I was interested in the exhibit, and I found the panel discussion aspect of it interesting. I had sort of two related questions. When you guys are sort of capturing some of this trauma that people are experiencing, I'm curious, how do you make your editorial decisions? Like, what is appropriate to show? What is not appropriate to show? Where do you draw that line? I'm curious to sort of what kind of conversations you all have in your with your teams. And the other sort of question was around sort of the public sort of numbing to images like these. There are so many, like I guess like the media landscape is so flooded with so many different pictures of tragic scenes, from climate change events to the war that was mentioned. I was really curious to sort of how do you guys as artists sort of deal with that sort of aspect of sort of that numbing that might happen when you see so many of these images. So it's just sort of those two questions, sort of the editorial discussions and how do you sort of think about that numbing? How do you capture and retain people's attention? Thank you.
So no, these are really great questions. Give it up for our friend that just stepped up to the microphone. So I think it's the editorial piece that feels like it's leaning towards Gideon and Ben. If y'all don't mind offering, obviously, Sari and Konshens, please offer if you have anything, but I would love to hear from y'all about that.
So about editorial choices, I know that as a photojournalist, I tend to photograph like a lot in a way, and it's more in the editorial part of the job that we choose like what makes sense, also given the context, what can we show, what cannot, and how to build a global picture. So for this Reframe Climate initiative, it was really a collaboration with the team at McDonald Foundation that we built a big group of images from a lot of places, hundreds and hundreds of pictures that we went through, and try to see how to, not have too many repetition, and how not to have anything too graphic as well, to recreate a narrative through the whole work and the flow, and that's really our approach also on how we present that to the street, to even if the pieces are not necessarily next to each other, but we kind of want, if you see the whole campaign, that it create and it add to each piece, add to each other, and create a body of work.
So I think, thank you for that really important question, because I think that for me is almost the kind of, it approaches the heart of what I'm trying to do. And I was talking about the origins of the work, and I think there was a phase when I was thinking about what this was, what I needed to, when I wanted to make work on climate change. I researched the imaging of climate change, you know, the kind of images which were out there in the libraries and the internet. And at that point, there were a lot of images of kind of glaciers and polar bears. And I wasn't seeing a lot of images of kind of people affected. You know, I think that has changed in the last kind of 15 years. You know, that has changed quite dramatically. But I wanted to create something which was kind of visceral and would kind of have a very direct impact. So for me, the choice to do kind of context portraiture, portraits of people within flood and fire was very important. And whereas I felt the kind of the direct engagement, you know, all the images with people have people looking directly at the camera. They're not doing anything. They're not trying to save their stuff. They're not trying to clear up their homes. They're looking directly at the viewer. And I think there've been questions about what is the nature of the gaze. Is it an accusing gaze? Is it an imploring gaze? Is it the gaze of a victim? Is it the gaze of someone who is trying to, you know, deal with what's happened? And I think there are a lot of question marks around that. And for me, there's the consistency of that gaze is kind of important. But I think still it is like, how do you break through the plethora of so many images? How do you get your images to make some kind of impact? That is the hard thing, and I don't know, you know, how we do it. I mean, I spent an hour this afternoon watching the people walk past my photograph that you've kind of posted, and you know, it's a very striking picture. And in that time, in an hour, 2 people stopped and looked and read. And I think for the public, you know, there's so many things are there trying to get your attention. So how, you know, and that is the puzzle to say, you know, just to get to, how do you get people's attention? I mean, in my choices, I think it was important for me, particularly in terms of climate change, that this was not, you know, only something which was far away, you know, sort of, and it was emphasized when I was photographing the floods in Germany last year. So many people said, this doesn't happen in Germany, this happens in Bangladesh and Africa. You know, so telling a global story that it's not the other. Climate change doesn't just happen to black and brown people on the other side of the world. It happens, it threatens us all. There's a shared vulnerability. And I think that's an important thing to try and get across. And the challenge is how we do it, and the kind of, I think we all are struggling to find the energies and the ways and the kind of keys to do that in different ways. And I was going to say, I love everything that all of you kind of did. Very briefly, I had the experience just sitting on this side when I was listening to your song. I saw those 3 screens were going on behind your song. And it was completely unintentional, but I just thought there was something so powerful about hearing those words and experiencing the song with those images of climate destruction going on behind them. I mean, it really came together. It's like it could have been planned. And I thought that Tower of Babel with the kind of plethora of voices, for me, just kind of epitomized. I don't know if it was intentional, but they just sort of somehow for me epitomized the kind of challenge we face in kind of getting the world to act together. And at a moment when climate action demands a unified global response, you know, everyone is just talking in different directions. You know, and that's the tragedy we see at the moment. And yeah, and just Ben, you know, it's amazing to be part of the show and, you know, and be part of what you're kind of creating out in the streets. You know, it's a huge privilege, and just to kind of be part of it and to witness witness it, and yeah, it's really a special experience. So thanks to all.
And I really think I want to go ahead and again affirm that those were such amazing questions. And I want to see if anyone else has another. Oh, my apologies.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's a very important topic. I'm an amateur photographer, and I've traveled not a great deal of the world, but I've had the experience of going to third world countries, and it's sometimes quite upsetting to see trash in the streets, plastic, human waste in the rivers, and just wondering what we can do. And I'm almost concerned that sometimes I will actually filter my photographs so I'm not taking these types of pictures. But sometimes you really can't get around it, and it's important to see it. But how do you even comment? Last 2 years ago, we were in Vietnam. It's a country is really dynamic, but there's a lot of waste, pollution, and it's like, who do we talk to? What do we do as individuals? Thank you.
Anyone can answer.
It's a big question.
I don't think there's one particular answer. So with regards to your question, you were saying like what can be done on a large scale, and what persons can be contacted with regards to this? I think that's $1 billion question, man. You had an answer for that, you would be well off, like immediately. I think, well, just from my perspective, I believe that first and foremost, it has to be a personal obligation for each individual to take responsibility to start that chain reaction, right? Other than that, I mean, from just me speaking, I think that's a conversation that needs to be taken to like the elites who actually have say-so and actually can push the button to make things happen. But I think on a ground level, I think if each of us can make a vow and a commitment, you know what I mean, to wherever we go, to be that beacon of environmental change, then I think, like I said, the domino effect then happens. I know me personally, my son keeps me honest all the time. I can be riding around and, just little things that I may eat a piece of gum and we're ready to throw the wrapper out the window, right? And my son will be like, Daddy, what are you doing? Like, my son checks me on everything. So it's like and it goes back to the question of how do you get young people to be more concerned about, you know what I mean? When you expose young people to these topics and put them in a room as to where it's acceptable and it's not looked down upon or clowned upon by when you put them in a room where it's acceptable, and that's like the standard of and the norm of what everybody in that room exercises. I think it has to start there.
And I was also thinking about the other person's question about how we get numbed by the images, and so how to help people feel connection and find beauty and hope and something, a passion, something to fight for, something worth. So I think sharing that, like, and then you said domino effect, like, yeah. So I think when people find that passion in themselves, like, that's what I try to help people with my work, to find that in themselves. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also think that what's important is that we all are here. We're all here having this conversation. We're making time to hear from these amazing artists. There's people that focus their work in fighting for our climate and policy, people that fight for it in education, the world of education, also in the world of art. And so I think it's really making it accessible and letting us know that each of us have a part to play in it, whether it's seen as something smaller, or even something larger. But I think all of us have a part to play in every, whether it's small or large, all of us can play that part. And no, I just want you all to know that what you all are doing today, just even being involved in this conversation, is extremely important. So thank you all for joining us and being a part of this community that's fighting for our planet and for our climate. I want to just ask one final question, and that question is, what makes you all hopeful for the future of our climate? What makes you all hopeful for the future of our climate?
I would say the youth that I'm around. Something about the youth these days are real different. It's like when they latch on to something and they like have their goals set on, okay, this is what we gonna do, it happens fast. You know what I mean? And I just think as long as they continue just to see that message being promoted, that I think they'll take it upon themselves to make sure that the vehicle goes to where it's supposed to go to.
Sari?
I second with you. I'm really excited to see how youth is taking on fighting for their future, education is very important. Many of my interviewees, they have mentioned how in their countries things have changed upon educating people, trash removal or something else. So education is like a weapon that we can use.
What about your work makes you hopeful for the future of our climate?
I guess to see all the initiatives that, all the projects, all the stories. To see all those stories on like positive actions of what people around the world, the amazing ideas they come up with that tackle climate change in all these various aspects. That's what kind of keeps me positive, to see all those people like really not just witnessing the effect, but really taking action.
And Gideon?
Okay, so to be very honest, at the moment, truthfully I have to say not much. You know, I mean, we're in a bad moment right now, kind of, you know, globally with Ukraine, with, you know, it just seems that the world has got itself into a terrible hole, and our dependence on fossil fuels has got us into, you know, a really difficult situation. But I do hold on to the hope of kind of, you know, seeing amazing creative activism happening. You know, I think I've been so impressed by actions done by Extinction Rebellion globally, but in the UK. And I wasn't there, but a friend of mine who does a lot of photography for them just told me about one event where they did, which involved a bunch of kind of elderly Extinction Rebellion activists between the ages of 60 and 80, men and women going into a bank, which is bankrolling a lot of oil, and taking off their clothes. The bank, the security, they just didn't know how to respond. And it was, I just thought, an immensely creative and funny kind of response. And just that kind of off the wall, out of the rule book kind of action, you know, is the kind of thing we need to see more and more. And that's the kind of thing which gives me hope.
We need to see more stripping down, just stripping our clothes off. Yeah. That's what we need to see more of. Y'all, I want to thank y'all so much for joining us. Gideon, clap it up, y'all. Ben, Sari, and Konshens, the MC. My name is OnRaé Watkins. Thank you all so much for joining us. Coal and Ice, Asian Society, Community Center. We hope that you all enjoy this exhibition. And we hope that you all have taken away something really important from this conversation today. So thank you all for joining us tonight.